How much did you actually make selling domains?
In actual cash earnings, probably $500 million.
Frank Schilling, entrepreneur who bootstrapped an internet empire.
What is the one skill every entrepreneur needs?
Well, every successful entrepreneur, I think, has grit. You need to have determination, unrelenting, and unwilling to quit. I'll tell you, shocking. I lost my daughter, beautiful girl. My ex-wife calls the other line and tells me she's dead, Frank. I'm like, oh. And then it's sound of like English accents in the background and cops. Something's going on. It's not good. I just fucking fell on the floor. I literally fell on the floor. Every day is a new life. Every day is a new opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself. Nobody's forcing you to do what you're doing. If you're tired of your business and it's not working, new day, new life. You reinvent yourself. It's on you to choose your path.
Okay, cheers before we
All
start.
right, cheers.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Merry Christmas, yes.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. We're here on Christmas Eve. What time is it? 11:30 on Christmas Eve. No rest for us.
No.
So I'm going to jump straight into it. One of the things that stood out to me, which was quite surprising, was you said that you were a late bloomer.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've learned is you can't conjure up, success on demand. Sometimes you're either programmed to try to, build a business, grow a business, create, or you're not. And sometimes people who aren't at a moment in time, and then they have a window. It's how great it's out there on YouTube. It's a great old 60 Minutes interview with Bob Dylan, and Ed Bradley is asking him about all the songs, rattling off the titles of the songs that we all know have been remade by everybody, poet of the 60s, Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I couldn't do that today. He was like saying, and he goes, I can do other things now, but I can't do that. I could do that then. It's like a window that the universe gives you that opens, and there are people that are receptive to walking through the window when it opens and trying to create when that opportunity presents itself. But you have to kind of wait for that opportunity to kind of come to you. It's like a portal that opens, and you have to be ready and to go through. And you're really, I think, successful people spend all of their time, whatever they find their success in, unless they're like win the lottery. And even then, you hear about people who win the lottery and then they blow it all within 18 months back to where they came from. You still have to be able to prepare to walk through the window and accept the change that's upon you, or accept the circumstance rather that's upon you, and make it work for you.
Yes. So what would you say to young entrepreneurs who are looking at the time and thinking, I'm 25 now or 30, thinking, or even younger than that? Some of these young kids who are 21 thinking they're at least about already.
You can conjure up some success in that moment if that's your time. But maybe you have a bigger success waiting later, or maybe that is your moment. It's sort of, not to be too touchy-feely, it comes down to the circumstances that are upon you. And there are opportunities all around, like today, some guy's closing on a real piece of real estate somewhere here on the island. And in 5 years, we're going to look back and go, wow, that was just the week before Christmas. Boy, he got a good deal. I mean, that's an opportunity and that's a simplistic analogy, or example rather. But there are others, there are things that are happening today, right now, December 24th, 2025, and there's an opportunity, that will, through the passage of time, will reflect back. So I would say, not to stress too much about your age, or your moment. But just feel for the right thing, for the right thing for you. I went to film school, and I was a little lost. I lost my brother at a young age. I was a teenager, and terrible time to lose. And
how did that feel?
It was very difficult, because we're immigrants. I was born in Germany. I spoke German. Right now, I'm more American and English speaking than I am, and I have an affinity. Of course, I'm Canadian and have a strong tie to the UK. So, I'm sort of this US centric person who understands English culture and Canadian culture, but I feel very American, because of the way I've lived in my life the last 20 years. That said, when I came over, I was a German kid at the end of my cul-de-sac. As kids were standing there going, what's your name? What's your name? And I didn't know what that meant. But they kept asking me over and over again, what's your name? What's your name? And I couldn't answer because I didn't know any English, right? I was a German immigrant. But So my brother was like my best friend, right? And we're about a year and a half apart and all that. So when he was 16, he passed away, and I was 17. And anyway, P.S. That was a real sort of bifurcation moment, a very difficult thing to go through. And so I floundered for a long time. I went to film school, I tried different things, and, but I remember being in film school and I was very stressed about how old I was, and I was 21 and I saw all these guys who were like 29, 30, like, oh my God, 29. That's like, you might as well be 96. Like, it was so old.
That was 29. So funny. I was the same. Like when I was a musician for 10 years and played like big festivals and toured. And I remember like I'd be meeting like record labels and I'd be like 22, 23 and they'd be like, how old are you? And I'm like 19 because you're trying to like be as young as possible.
Right.
So I know
22
exactly.
22 is terrifying. It's like you're over the hill.
Yeah.
So I think, what I've learned is maybe don't stress so much about that. I'm 56 right now. I feel like I'm, honestly, like probably 37, or 35, I feel young, and I feel healthy. But putting that whole worrying about age thing aside, I saw these guys who were 29 and I thought, wow, they're so over the hill. I can't imagine staying in film for 10 years of my life and not to make it, and be 29 and still struggling, and me being here at 22 with you. So I kind of gave up on something I cared about because I was too terrified of that I was in the wrong thing. But the truth was I was in the wrong thing. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like that wasn't my thing. My thing was something different, and it's something I care about, film. Yeah. And it's something I'm interested in. But making movies is not what I was destined to do. I was destined to do different things.
And so, what inspired the move over to Cayman then? Because if you come out with film, is it off the back of film school and traveling around?
No, I came down. I hate to be so overly simplistic, but I grew up quite simply in Canada. I had a normal upbringing, very middle class, I would call it, life. My father was a physician, but in spite of that, in Canada, it's socialized medicine. Your overheads are insane. Your taxes on what's left are even more insane. There were plumbers making twice what my dad was making as a physician. So my point is that we grew up solidly middle class. Mm-hmm. And we only kind of made it look better than middle class because, my grandmother lived with us and she chipped in a little bit. And so on, we all kind of lived together as a sort of as a family of immigrants, right? My point is, I didn't have like a roadmap to success or prosperity or any of that. I didn't have a mentor, which is something I wish I had. I see now people have a good mentor, somebody, and I did find a friend who was a mentor later who kind of helped me find my way in technology. And that was incredibly helpful. So I would encourage anybody who's watching your podcast to find a mentor. But that mentor ultimately helped me find my way in business. The business became a huge success. Yeah. And I had a tax problem, being, taxed heavily. A little like the Rolling Stones in the 60s had to leave Europe and all wound up in Switzerland. Wherever. In a similar way, in the 90s, I was like, very successful in Canada all of a sudden. And I had a window where if I stayed any longer, my exit taxes were going to be so prohibitive that I had to either make the decision now, and I could honestly look at the tax man in the face and say, look, here's my business. This is what I've made. I'm leaving right now. But if I stayed another year, my earnings were pipeline of earnings potential were so great that had I earned them, which I ultimately did, that the tax burden would have been so prohibitive I couldn't have financially left because I would have had to pay, 10 years worth of taxes. It would have been, the timing was everything. And so anyway, I found the most favorable tax haven possible and I moved there, and that was the Cayman Islands. It was also the most livable. We're the nicest people, best quality of life, closest to it's a really magical place we live in here.
Just jumping back to when you were talking about a mentor.
Yes. What
would you say are the key traits in a great mentor?
Oh, great question. I think there are a few. Probably the greatest trait in a mentor is to find somebody who's willing to give you just enough information so that you can solve a problem on your own. So a mentor is not somebody who writes you a check and tells you exactly how to do it. A mentor is somebody who who understands your own skill set, observes you with genuine interest, and altruistically tries to inspire you to help yourself and gives you just enough of the clues to help you close the gap on your own and empower yourself and lift yourself in the process. That's a great mentor.
What was the greatest learning that you got from your mentor?
You know, he did exactly what I described, this mentor. He was a decade older than me, a great lust for life, incredible personality, handsome guy, you know, ladies' man. I mean, just exactly what you picture. Like everybody wants to be his friend. Every woman wants to sleep with him. You know, it's that simple. And he was just a lovely guy, and still with us, and still is a lovely guy. We became incredibly close, and then we kind of drifted apart a little bit. We still think incredibly well of each other. I certainly do of him, and I like to think he does of me. But the point is just our orbits worked in such a way that we just pulled apart later. And that happens. That's normal and good, and nothing wrong with that. But the point is, what he did is just what I described. He helped me find enough of the clues to help me solve the problems I was seeking to solve, that helped me lift and create and build my business.
Wow.
And it was a very powerful thing, you know, because, you know, if he teaches you, you're always going to be running back, you know, for help. And if he shows you exactly what to do, if he gives you clues, you know, and helps guide you, that's much stronger, you know, it's much more of a powerful thing. Anyway, I think that's the single greatest thing that a good mentor can do, and make himself available. You know, a lot of people are just aloof, not helpful, not genuine. You know,
so you're a legend in the domain game.
Everybody always says that. It's very flattering. You know, I think that comes from the fact that I, like my mentor was to me, I've tried to help other people, and give them clues and help. When in a time when nobody was doing that, when there was such a competitive advantage to being private and clubby, I was not, and I tried to be altruistic and help people, and so people think well of me for that. I think.
Oh, here we go.
Please.
Looks like we're getting caviar mid podcast.
Wow, that's
a little pastrami. Croque madame.
It is lunch.
Wow.
I'll take this one. Doesn't look too cheesy.
Yeah.
Wow. Croque madame. I do love French food.
There we go.
Caviar. Russian, but hey.
Wow. I'll take a small bite of this one.
Oh.
My God.
My God.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Incredible. Thank you.
And on the menu, actually, this one.
So, moving on from caviar, this is a bit of a... I'll let you finish your mouth. How much did you actually make selling domains?
Not as much as people think. Probably in actual cash earnings, probably $500 million. $500 million, 500 million roughly, US after tax. Yeah, but you know, you got to think that's over a 22-year career. And you know, you're spending, actually maybe a little more, to be honest with you. Maybe a little more.
Wow.
I have to do the math, but let's call it at least $500 million. And you got to remember, you're at the apex of my years. You know, I was spending, you know, probably $10 million a year.
Yeah,
over 20 years.
Yeah, that was my next question.
So I spent probably $200 million.
Did you take any investment?
No.
Why?
Well, I mean, we were cash flowing. You know, we didn't need any money. So if you need money, then you take on a partner, and the partner takes, you know, a considerable slice of the pie in exchange for that money, which is can do other things. If you don't take money, you know, you just bootstrap, spend your own money, make more money, spend your own money, make more money, more money, more money. It's like a velocity.
Yeah.
You don't have any partners. You get to keep all the money.
Do you think that is the right way to do it?
Well, I think there isn't a one size fits all.
Yeah.
If you take other people's money, there must be a reason. You need the money. You don't have it yourself. Yeah. You don't have enough velocity bootstrapping that you can make it enough fast enough. And time is the enemy, right? So we're all getting older by every minute. You know, I don't know what was happening yesterday, but it's gone. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we're here right now.
Yeah.
And time is the enemy. You know, you only have so many days, and you don't know how many there are. So if you know you have a winning formula, and if only I had more money, I could go faster, then there's an incentive to share. So you say, if you give me, you know, $50, $100 million, I can give you back 200, 500, but we can get where we're going faster, right? So that's another reason.
How important is speed when launching a new business?
There's some businesses that are better when allowed to come into themselves and grow through time. There are other businesses where an opportunity can close quickly, or competition can come faster and gazump you, or there are things that can happen that could disintermediate where you're going. Your trajectory can change if you don't grow faster. So it really, there isn't like a pat answer. It just depends on the circumstance of the milieu of what you're working on.
Because a lot of the tech companies, the young tech companies, they're raising huge amounts of capital straight out the gate.
Yeah. A lot of those guys have no money. So they've got a great idea. They have youth, a great story, but they have absolutely no agency, no stake, no money, nothing. So they're trading their story and their youth for investment from somebody else to try to grow faster. You know what I mean? To grow at all. Yeah. And then to get as much money as possible is important. But it's a double-edged sword. You have to pay it back, or default. And if you default, it's bad.
You get wiped out.
Yeah, it's just bad because, if you make an honest mistake, but if you take in too much capital from somebody, and it just sounds great. I'm worth $1 billion. I'm worth $2 billion. And then you can't deliver 4, 6, 8, and you $500 million. I mean, you don't get to keep the money personally, but your reputation is in the toilet forever. Yeah. That goes with you, unfortunately, right? So it's kind of like it's not like your money to take, it's your investor's money. So that's another thing. There's a big responsibility that comes from taking an investor's money. You have an onus of responsibility to deliver, both karmically in the universe, under the eyes of God, or whatever your belief is,
Yeah.
And also, to your investors, a duty under law, to deliver what you say you're going to do, right? So, you have to weigh your circumstance and know what you're doing, and have, when you have make sure you have good advice. If you have a greedy advisor who wants you to get as much money as possible, and you really have the devil on your shoulder telling you do this terrible thing to somebody else. You need to have the angel on your other shoulder to tell you, don't do that, have some good common sense, know right from wrong, it's all very important. It's grandma's sage advice, simplistic, cartoon-like things that are truisms in life that you have to use to guide you in your journey, because they're all true. Everything comes home in the end, all.
And how did you identify the opportunity to get into the main business, and how would you look for opportunities like that for someone today? This
goes back to my inaugural comment about the window and the Bob Dylan story I shared. You need to be able to let the universe guide you. It'll leave yourself open to something coming. Wait for it. You're doing something right now as a hobby. Yeah. When you're not, whether it's editing this segment for your thing, it's something that you like to do and it's a hobby. I go on car websites. I love cars. That's a hobby. Yeah. I when I was younger, I used to troll real estate neighborhoods, for real estate stuff before Zillow, before online, before the internet. And I was interested in real estate, and I'm a developer, So, there are things that you're doing now that will guide you. You leave yourself open to them. And then every now and then, the universe gives you something. You have to kind of leave yourself open to everything, learn, study, be alert to things, and then you will see something. Oh, very important.
Is it obvious once that opportunity presents itself?
This is the most, I'm so glad I caught this. I almost forgot. This is very important. When an opportunity finally presents itself, you will tell yourself, well, I've seen it. This can't be any good at all. Everybody's seen it. Do not do that. That is the number one, probably number 2 reason people fail, because they say, if I've seen it, everybody must know. No, and somebody else probably doesn't know. Treat each thing. Never take for granted your own incredible wisdom, your own incredible intellect, your own incredible ability to suss something special out. Never take for granted your own vision, because you could see something and think to yourself, wow, I've seen it. I'm not that smart. Yeah. So-and-so has much more money than I do. So I don't have any money at all. I don't know anything. If I've seen this incredible thing that nobody else has seen, somebody else must have too. Oh, well. Yeah. 2, 3, 4 years go by. Somebody else does it, becomes incredibly successful. You're like, how could I have not seen that? How I had it. I was right there. That is
so funny you say that. We, when there was the voice cloning was happening we launched within a couple of weeks, we launched an AI voice cloning business. And we were cloning musicians' voices and letting them license it out to other artists. And we work with a guy called Randy Travis, who lost his voice.
Okay.
And we cloned his voice, and he released a record which was covered on the Joe Rogan podcast and everything. That was us. And then we didn't get a real uptick from the market because musicians weren't that pleased about licensing their voice out. And then 11 Labs, you see that's like a huge business, blows up, and then like, oh, nobody will want to license out there. And now I see Matthew McConaughey doing it. I'm like, so I've had that moment now. I'm like, no way. So my next thing, I'm like, I can't make that mistake twice.
Wow.
So I've definitely learned that one.
And the other thing to take away from that is very important is maybe that voice cloning thing was not for you.
Yeah.
You know, that was not your thing.
Yeah.
You didn't care about it that much. Passion is incredibly important.
What is the one skill every entrepreneur needs?
Well, every successful entrepreneur, I think, has grit. You need to have determination to continue doggedly to do something that to outward observers looks like a lost cause or a hopeless case. You need to be unrelenting and unwilling to quit.
And in your journey, when did that happen with you?
Well, the whole way, really. I mean, I never stopped. I mean, it was very singular. When I thought this was going to work, I was convinced it was going to work, what I was doing in the domain milieu, I mean. And actually in every milieu in which I found success, I didn't stop. You know, Aphrodite, we have this beautiful bubbly. 3 years, you know, we still haven't made any money. We've sold it. We've had, like, Elton John has drunk this. We've had, like, Sting drink it. Yeah, it's our bubbly. It's made in Greece. It's beautiful. I'm in the business because you can day drink it in the heat, in the sun.
I can vouch for it.
and you can recover quickly. You can have, you know, a nice dinner afterwards after day drinking. Whereas if you're doing rum or tequila, you're done for, you know. We discovered that and we kind of improved the product, but still no money, you know, but we're not quitting. You know, we believe in it. We understand it, and we know it'll find its moment when it becomes incendiary and goes parabolic, but we don't know when or how. But we know that if we quit, it'll never happen, you know? And so you have to kind of have that conviction, you know, and willingness not to quit. This restaurant, you know, as I told you before we began, we've had every visiting celebrity of renown in here, captains of industry, billionaires, from around the world. You cannot believe who's in this room at times. You just cannot believe it. You like sat here. It's like
it's the biggest name you've had in here.
You know, multi billionaires that you see on television that are, you know, I don't want to betray any confidences and have it come back on me, but like exactly who you think. You know, pick a name and one of them or multiples have been in this room. And so you think about that for a minute. We almost, you know, there were times when we would have given up. You know, I mean, we were losing so much money in the beginning. It was just terrible. Even now, it's not, cash flow is fine, but it's not like what you would imagine. It's not like, because we're not in Miami or New York. We're in the Cayman Islands. You know, it's an unusual, high quality restaurant to have in such a far flung location. You wouldn't find this in St. Bart's, you know, that doesn't exist. It's more rustic, you know, because the market demands that. The market forces demand. It's just an anomaly, you know, to have this here, you know. But had we quit, we would have never found any success. None of those people would have come. Nobody would have been here. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy if you can drive it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be willing and believe in what you're doing enough. Now, are there better things to do with your money than open a restaurant like this here? Absolutely. You know, this is a terrible way to make money. But, you know, you just don't know what'll happen. Like, you know, we've had people tap us in the shoulder and say, I'd like to open one of these in my casino or in my, you know, hotel. And you know, tell me about your concept. I like what you're doing here. And so you know you're on the right path when that happens, you know. And that's just one example. Yeah. You know, the domain business is a whole nother matter.
I grew up in a restaurant. My mum's partner at the time had a restaurant, so I used to go to the restaurant every single day when I was like 12 years old.
What type of food?
It was Mediterranean food. And I absolutely loved it. I think my end goal, I learned how to cook in there from the chefs.
Wow.
So I think once I've sold my business for hopefully hundreds of millions like you, I'll be joining you in the restaurant business.
You have to do what you like. You know,
Yeah,
if that's something you like and you're passionate about. This concept or a place like this didn't exist in this country when we did this, and it still doesn't really. But the point is, you know, I had friends come here and they were like, "Well, where are we going to go? You know, like, what are we going to do tonight?" And I'd be like, "Well, we're going to go to the airport. We're going to get on my plane, and we're going to go to Miami because there's nothing to do here." You know, that's literally how it was.
Wow.
You know, now, mercifully, the island has evolved a lot, and this place, you know, we tried to raise the bar. One of my fellow colleague restaurateurs in the country said, "You know, Frank, I can see what you're doing. You're trying to raise the bar." And I was like, "Wait, you know, actually, I didn't. I guess so, but I didn't really kind of set out to raise the bar. I just wanted something better for myself. Exactly. I live across the street. I could come across and walk with my friends. Let's go for a drink, and you know, and enjoy a nice dinner, and you know, have everything be of a different standard or caliber. And I hope that would inspire other people to do better. So yes, but I never really kind of woke up and said, I'm going to raise the bar. You know, I just really wanted this.
And when you were talking about obviously putting lots of money into a business like this, what is the most expensive mistake you've made?
Oh, building a restaurant. But you know, tongue in cheek, but kind of, you know, because a lot of things shoot off of that. You know, you remember we're on an island, a little like the Hawaii of the Caribbean. You know, it's not like St. Bart's where there's another island 40 miles away. We're you know, 250 miles from Jamaica, 250 miles from Cuba. Yeah. We're in a little dot, sort of all by itself, away from Central America, away from everything, right? Which is great. Makes it very safe. You can't just get in an aluminum boat after stealing my TV and get out of the country. You know what I mean? Whereas you can in, like, you know, in some of the Eastern Caribbean islands. Yeah, that's a big problem. But here you're kind of isolated, you know, which is wonderful. But you have to bring everything in. You know, you have to bring in wine, expensive wine. You have to bring in. So we created a whole lot of supporting business because the local wine importer didn't have we were looking for, so we got an importer's license. So, you know, all of that was probably a mistake, you know, to do for a restaurant. But, you know, live and learn, you know.
What role has failure played in your success?
I don't like failure. So when you don't like failure, you try to avoid it. And that makes you more successful because you try to avoid failure. I mean, that's sort of a 3-year-old's answer. I have a 3-year-old at home, so yeah. So it's kind of a 3-year-old's answer, but it is true. I mean, you know, you don't want to fail. It's embarrassing to fail. You know, I was more embarrassed when I was younger about things. I'm not as embarrassed anymore as I get older, but you know, I'm still have a tendency. I'll have a tendency not to want to be embarrassed. Yeah. So there's that. But you know, failure, obviously, I mean, the trite answer is it helps you grow because you learn from it and it helps you evolve and not make the same mistake twice. But the truth is, if you're a dreamer, you're going to make the same mistakes over and over again. And that's okay, as long as your successes are bigger, you know, when you're successful, that you can paper over them. You know, everybody is programmed a certain way. You know, I'm programmed a certain, my mindset and the way I'm made is a certain way. And so I'm programmed to make a certain mistake over and over again. That's my vault. If I were a I mean, I'm too big a dreamer. Yeah. Too big a dreamer.
You always see a big project and I'm going for that.
I'm going to go for that. And even though there's no way to make money with it right away. Yeah. There's no obvious way to make money, but you just know instinctively that it's the right thing and that it'll manifest into something bigger. And so I keep pursuing those dreams. That's a mistake. I'd be far better off if I bought FANG stocks and did nothing, you know what I mean, and kept dreaming big dreams, you know? Yeah. But when you're successful, everybody who owns a FANG stock and is bragging about their 10-banger looks at you and you've made 1,000 times your return. And people are like, how the fuck did he do that? You know? And that's where it comes from. You got to be able to...
You like to prove people wrong?
Not deliberately, but there's something in the movies where you prove somebody wrong and it feels good. And it always seems like the music always comes up in the movies at that moment. And it seems like it's the, an affirmational moment that you're on the right path, that you proved somebody wrong.
Yeah. And, so I guess now that we're here on Christmas Eve, how do you, what do you feel about work-life balance?
You know, for me, I can only speak to myself personally. I don't think work-life balance is something that comes out of the mouth of most entrepreneurs. And what I mean is, it's fanciful for somebody young starting out to say, "Oh, I'm going to have a work-life balance." But the truth is, there were times when I was doing something in my business, and I remember part of me, like if I'm 5 people inside or whatever, one of them saying, "Look, I've had enough. Let's go to bed. I need to get some sleep. I'm tired." And 4 of them would be like, "Fuck that. We're working. We're going all night if we have to." You know what I mean? So, but this idea of a work-life balance is, I think speaking for myself, my work is sort of who I've become. I'm always noodling away on the computer, doing something. You can call it work. It is work, really, to some. But to me, it's part of my overall makeup as a person, So I don't see it as work. I see it as something, it's sort of part of who I've become as a man.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find the same thing about yourself when you find something you like to do. You switch off to go to sleep, you switch off to eat, to reproduce.
Yeah.
You have a family, and your partner.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's very mechanical. You keep doing what you do because, it's who you are, So I don't really try to solve for a classical, as soon as you say the words work-life balance, it almost lays down a gauntlet. Like you have to, now? We've already been here for, an hour and a half. I had a work-life balance, I better get back to it.
So those guys that you had in your business who were like, let's go, let's keep going. How do you find those A players to bring into your business?
You have to, inspire people. Meaning you have to, through your own energy and effort and passion, find other people who are like, you know what? I worked at a place before and I didn't have this. And it was so uninspiring. This is what I want. I want somebody who challenges me, pushes me, allows me to do things differently, allows me to pursue the things that I want. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you got to find those people that are like-minded, that also want what you're doing.
Is there something that you can do to kind of build up that inspiration within the camp, or like a certain goal or skill or task or something?
With some people, and you have to have a good ability. You're going to hire and fire a lot of people. I have a reputation, and in here locally, people say, "Oh, Frank's fired more people." I really don't think so. I fired very few, really, but a lot of them are very vocal when I fire them. They're like, "Oh my God, he fired me! Oh my Lord, I can't believe it!" But people will be like, "Oh, Frank again? Oh, of course, yeah. 3rd person I've heard of that's been fired by Frank." But in any other business, you fire like 10x that number. People there are some CEOs who are like just absolutely, completely unwilling to invest in people. That's not the way to go. Like grinding through people. I think you can get away with it in a larger world, like in America maybe, where there's 300 million people, and you're just like, I got the wrong person, next, and then you only point to your own successes. But I think a good entrepreneur makes room to nurture and mentor some people who are sometimes frankly incapable and the wrong person. And you allow them to blossom into themselves and maybe find a place for them elsewhere in the organization if it doesn't work. Yeah. That's how I've done it here. Funny story. When we were starting the internet business here.
Yeah. What was the name of that business?
It was UNR, Uniregistry. Yep. It was multiple businesses. The parent company was Uniregistry. That GoDaddy bought, ultimately. But I remember we had the office here. It was what we call a googly office, meaning, massage chairs and sleep pods and a fully stocked chef's kitchen at the back with like 6 kinds of ice cream, and you know what I mean? And
wow.
It was like a clubhouse, because you're here in the Cayman Islands, it's very hot. Yeah. For a lot of the year. It's like the opposite of being in Alaska. It's like in Alaska, it's very cold. You got to go outside and rug up. Here, you can't go outside because it's just too hot. It's a little Dubai-esque in the summers. But you're working year round. I can go off to Europe in the summer for 2 months, but not everybody can go off to Europe for 2 months in the summer. People are working, And so we had this sort of a clubhouse-like office, air conditioned, lots of distractions, food, everything's taken care of. And we needed people, and we couldn't bring people in. We needed the kind of people, the smartest, the best, the brightest engineers, developers at that time. This is before AI. Yeah. Everything was coded by hand. So we'd bring these people in, and we couldn't afford their permits because the government had this overlay matrix that didn't work for us. If you're a bank and you're making billions of dollars, and you say you want to bring in a software engineer to the Cayman Islands, they're willing to pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for that permit. you can't do that as an entrepreneurial organization. You can't pay those types of taxes for your payroll taxes for your employees. So we made an appeal to the government. With the help of a local businessman who's connected to the government, we said, look, we want to build a new class of business here that isn't being done. You're not getting this business. It's not here now. But if you allow us, we'll bring people in and we'll train some local people and maybe we'll get some great talent out of it. Locally, completely Caymanian local talent. Caymanian, for the benefit of people watching, doesn't just mean people of color that are like from the islands. It means they're from all walks of life. They're Irish people, they're Canadian, but they happen to have Cayman status through their family or whatever, right? They're all manner of people, you know, a melting pot, one of everybody. But they all have status, and because there's very few jobs down here other than banking, finance, accounting. There's almost zero unemployment, by the way. But it's not the types of jobs that make a dynamic economy.
Business, yeah.
Right. In our business, we're trying to build a dynamic economy. Anyway, short story. I'll shorten this very long-winded story. We couldn't get enough good people. We went to the government. We said, give us a deal on permits. We can't pay more than $2,000 or $3,000 per permit holder because these people, junior software engineers making back then $60,000 a year, I can't pay a $15,000 permit or $20,000 permit on a $60,000 a year guy. It does not work, right? So if you want these people to come and teach other people what they're doing and help grow an economy, help me and I will help us back. And I did. And they said, great, well, we want you to do all these conditional things, which I did. But on top of it, on top of all the conditions that were all beneficial to the Cayman people and the Cayman government and things that they couldn't get any other way, on top of it, they wanted me to hire 25% Caymanians. And they, and teach them. And they didn't care, tongue in cheek, they didn't care what we had them do, but we had to hire them. And I said, well, let's try to hire some engineers. And we did. And those people are still, pass me on the street and will say, thank you for the opportunity. And, at the end, when we look down, we didn't try that hard. I mean, we tried, but we weren't like killing ourselves trying to staff with the wrong people and the right, we just tried to hire the best and to nurture them. And I said, what's our percentage? And, we need 25%. What's our percentage? At the apex, we had 38% Caymanians working on the team. Yeah, so it wasn't like, you know what I mean? You just needed to show these folks what to do. And they were incredible, and they were some of our best team members. And to this day, I mean, I see them and they're doing fantastic. One of them is now, a senior software engineer for a big organization. A lot of them stayed with GoDaddy. One of them left and decided she wanted to fly airplanes, and she's now pilot for Cayman Airways. She's flying, jet aircraft. I mean, incredible, right? So, I mean, and she was one of our best star people, like literally at the absolute apex of what she was doing. So
you've mentioned GoDaddy a few times.
Yeah.
What was it like selling your company to GoDaddy?
Very unusual. I mean, I like those guys a lot, the people in the organization. We were friends for a long time. Frenemies, I like to say, because, we're just like in what we tried to do in this restaurant, raise the bar. We tried to raise the bar in the domain business for managing domains. That was what we did well. If you had one domain name, or 2 or 5 or 10, you could, back then you could go to a GoDaddy, but you couldn't manage like thousands. It wasn't efficient. I mean, you could with help, but it wasn't great, And so we sold them technology that allowed them to manage, it will allow a registrar to manage lots of domain names. We sold them a portfolio of names for their sales business. We sold them, it turned out being 5 companies that we wound up selling. We sold 1 and then reluctantly sold 2. And by the time we'd sold 2, they said, well, we're interested in the other 3. And we were like, okay, well, what the hell? Because it was sort of a tipping point. And it was accidental. I mean, it was somewhat accidental. I've been doing the business for almost 25 years. And it was good money. Yeah. It was a lot of money all at once, which is time. And, a lot of guys in the industry had, gone through the cycle of life. Meaning, you had a guy who had a heart attack and passed away that and they make a memorial in his honor. But you remember him like just standing there like I'm sitting here across from you. And you're like, that's not, I don't want to be remembered as that guy that only did that, And so I was ready to kind of change it up and do something else. 2 years earlier, my marriage had broken down. My first marriage, 3 years earlier. And we were making it work. We were like, okay, well, look, we'll split the company, we'll do shares, or I'll buy you out, you buy me out, things like that. Those types of conversations are taking, but it wasn't like, I realized, the combination of like my peer group, dying at their job and being remembered as the best guy that ever did that one thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did not sound that appealing to me. I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to go down as Frank Schilling was a great domainer, the greatest guy in the domain business, legend. I love that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to write another chapter completely different, like Rupert Murdoch's a great newsman. He ran great newspapers, but he sold, his empire to Disney. I mean, that was a huge deal. And then he's still doing incredible things, in media in America and around the world, and I at 94, and I wanted to have more of that type of a life than just be known as a newsman, So anyways, it was a five company deal, and it started at the in early autumn of 2019, I think 19, and then it closed right as they were doing COVID lockdowns, so crazy.
So what do you do when you sell your business for, I guess, hundreds of millions, and then you have that money in your bank and you just sat there like...
The first thing you do is you take a selfie with the screen with your bank account balance. Because nobody will believe you. It's like, because, nobody's ever, only your banker's seen that big a number. Oh, yeah, Bob's got a number way bigger. Yeah, no, that's great and everything, but congratulations, but, whoa, I've seen way bigger.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. Really? It's the most money I've ever seen in one spot at one time. Wow.
Wow, that's incredible. Did you have any wild purchases after you sold off?
I bought a lot of real estate, things that I was, things, like the investments. I can't help myself. I'd been rich for 20 years. You know what I mean? Buying things, watches, cars, an airplane, things along the way. So when you had all the money, now you can do things like you can do. It was COVID. There was 2 years of lockdowns down here. I mean, it was weird, So you suddenly come into all this money and the world's shutting down. Do you know what I mean? Which is a great time to come liquid. But at the same time, a terrible time because you don't know what to do. I've had friends who sold their business and they were like, man, I lost half my net worth in the next year because I bought stocks and then I got scared and I sold them when the stocks went down and things like that. And I didn't want to do that. So I was just kind of like frozen, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm kind of a property developer. Yeah. I own a lot of real estate, and that's my thing. And it's very boring.
How important is a partner?
When I sold my business, I had a girlfriend. Mm-hmm. We had a baby. Didn't work out. She was the wrong person. I knew she was the wrong person, but I still had the baby. You know what I mean? Because I felt like I wanted to be a father again. I didn't think I was going to meet anybody else to have a baby with. So we had a baby. Beautiful little boy. Amazing. Partner turned into a complete, oh my God, just impossible to deal with. Impossible to, and that's the nicest way to put it. Impossible to deal with. You couldn't make a deal. You couldn't, everything's a struggle, right? Which was a surprise because at one point you were very loving, shared a bed, shared a house. Now you just, and it's a girlfriend. It's not your ex-wife, which you have a long history or something, Anyway, so P.S., you go through that. Now I'm single, and I mean single. There's no, I got a thing on the side, and I got a girlfriend, but I got another thing. Nothing. I'm single. I started experimenting for the first time with Tinder. I'm like, I don't want to be on here. And then I'm like, you know what I mean? And then
what was your Tinder bio?
Oh, no, I didn't even get that far. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I had a friend show me how it all worked, because I didn't even know how Tinder worked. I mean, I'm serious, right? Embarrassing. A technology guy doesn't know how Tinder worked. And Raya turned me down. Well, but I'm rich. No, it doesn't matter. But I'm good looking. No, we don't care. So, so I was like, okay, so I'm single. And actually, that worked out really well because I was single for a while, but I was never in hunt of a date. Meaning, I'm social and I'm a likable guy, and I like people, and so I was like, so I would always kind of get what I needed dating wise. never be like long dry spells of like not dating or something like that. I was always like had people around, and it was great. And I wasn't like, it wasn't weird. It's like, date me because I'm rich or something. I was like really low key about it. I tried not to tell people what I did, like I tried to date in different areas, so people didn't know anything about me. Use my middle name, things like that. So I was single for a good long stretch. And then I met my partner, Gabby, completely by accident, like at a fundraiser for kids with special needs. And she was there with a girlfriend, and everybody was trying to set me up with people. I had friends there. You got to meet this girl. And I was like, that girl's a hoe. I met her in like Mykonos last summer. And like, and they'd be like, you got to meet this girl. And I'd be like, she sells real estate on the Upper East Side. I met her like 2 summers ago. And she wasn't very nice, and so I went through the whole cycle of like, I was like, I'm not going to meet anybody. And then I saw Gabby. She was standing like literally not at the bar, but like back from the bar waiting for a friend, very tall, but very demure. And I was like, this girl seems nice. I just started talking with her. I was like, she's way too beautiful for me and way too young. You know what I mean? And now we have a baby. I mean, like crazy, right? Like, I mean, and one of the least materialistic people I've ever met. She's like, don't spend any money. Stop that. Like, has her own money. Her mom has her own dough. So like, I mean, that's what I'm saying, like, I mean, you got to kind of, whether you're finding a partner or trying to solve for business, you got to kind of, I couldn't conjure this girl up. Like she came to me like 6-7 months after breaking up with my ex-girlfriend on a terrible deal, right? So that's it's like that with everything. I think you got to kind of you got to wait for it to come to you and then be willing. Had I not talked to her because I was intimidated, which I was, but had I not talked to her, we have no baby, right? No baby.
So
no
your slogan to this restaurant, I believe, is "New Day, New Life."
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Wow. Well, nobody's ever asked me that, actually. That's very interesting. So what it means, very important saying, actually, new day, new life. So, every day, today, we're living right now today, in a moment, right? And yesterday, you can't get it back. It's a memory, if you can remember. And tomorrow, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, I mean, I'll tell you, shocking, I lost my daughter. She was a beautiful girl. I'm still coming to terms with it. It's like just terrible. I'll tell you the story. When I went through the divorce, my son and I were incredibly close. My son and his sister, my daughter, incredibly close. My ex wife and all 2 kids rather, the 3 of them, incredibly close. But where my daughter was concerned, she always put up walls. And she would be very, just completely, I'd be like, tell her brother, Leo, tell your sister I love her. I know. I'm like, what do you think's going on with all? I don't know, Dad. I don't get it either. I'm like, stuff like that. We'd have this boy talk. She had a gallbladder surgery. And she started dating this Italian guy, Marco, lovely guy. Yeah. And after they started dating, he was a lot older than her. She was 21. He was 35. They started dating. And all of a sudden, family guy, Italian, Elle starts calling me going, Dad, I just want to let you know I'm thinking about you. I was very sweet, but she ghosted me for so long, made it so difficult to connect that I was always guarded because I was so hurt. You know what I mean? It's like when she died, but it was like she died for me every day of those, when I'd call her the hundreds of times trying to reach out to her and she'd, ghost me. It was.
How did it happen?
She had gallbladder surgery in New York. Her mother had the same problem. Gallbladder out, reasonably routine surgery. Surgery went well enough, but she had some complications, minor. But we're still having an autopsy done as we speak. We're waiting for the UK authorities because she died in London. She was going to school in London, went back from the hospital in New York, and her brother found her. But the way that he found her, it's symptomatic or endemic, rather. The appearance of it is that she had an embolism, which can result from clots after the surgery, right? Devastating. I mean, I could talk about it for an hour, but I'd rather not. I've been grieving enormously over the last several weeks. Yeah, it was November 8th. She lost her life. We're here December 24th. And I tell everybody, she in a perverse way, she made it easy for me, as opposed to her mother and brother, because, she died a little bit every day. I couldn't, communicate. And so it was like, she wouldn't get back to me. She wouldn't, make herself available. She'd get drunk sometimes and call me out of the blue and act like everything was normal. And then I'd not hear from her. Anyway, P.S., terrible, terrible situation, right? For a father to go through, lose a child. just awful. So my point is,
When was the last time you spoke with them?
we were getting along better. As I said, I saw her in London with her mother and brother, and we all had dinner at Claridge's, their favorite little hotel. My ex-wife lives there when she's in London. So, we had dinner at Claridge's, at Dante's. She loved the sliders there. And it was a nice dinner. But she looked pale in the photograph. I took a selfie. She'd never let me put photos of her up. She was very, very shy and private. And I hated that because here she was, so shy, so private. Don't put a photo up. Don't put anything on Instagram about me. Don't do anything. And now she's gone. It's like I never had a daughter. It's like how
does that make you feel?
Well, I'm terrible. Terrible as a father. But so new day, new life. My yesterday is gone. I can't get her back. I can't get my daughter back. We've all had losses that we can't recover from or can't easily unwind. Tomorrow, I don't know what's going to happen. The day that she died, I was here on the beach with friends, having breakfast at Tilly's at Palm Heights, having pancakes stuffed with ricotta. I get a call at like 12:07. 12:07, I get a call that I miss. At 12:08, I look at my phone. Oh, shit. There's a bunch of missed calls from my ex-wife. That's never good. She never calls, right? Not with any good news. So I'm like, I call back, and I see a missed call from my daughter. So I'm like, oh, shit. Something's happened to Leo, I thought, who I'm incredibly close with. I thought it was just something's wrong. So I call, and Leo picks up the phone. I'm like, Leo? I'm on Elle's phone. What's going on? He's like, something's wrong, Dad. It's Elle. I'm at her flat. Something's wrong. And then there's sound of like English accents in the background and cops. Something's going on. It's not good. Then my ex-wife calls on the other line and tells me she's dead, Frank. I'm like, oh, I just fucking fell on the floor. I literally fell on the floor. Like I've never had that. I just fell down. I just couldn't fucking stand. So I'm on the beach with my friends who've flown here, like a whole bunch of different friends who've just come to visit, having ricotta pancakes at like 11:30. At 12:07, I get this news. By 1:30, my plane is in the air. I'm in the fucking air on my way to Philadelphia to catch a commercial flight over to London. And I was the first guy to arrive, after this whole thing. P.S. I didn't know when I'm stuffing my face with a ricotta pancake that my daughter is having an embolism and dying. I didn't know that, what was going to happen tomorrow. So, every day is a terrible way to punctuation point to put on, but every day is new day is a new life. Every day is a new opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself. Nobody's forcing you to do what you're doing. If you're tired of your business and it's not working, new day, new life. You reinvent yourself. It's on you to choose your path.
Did that experience, I guess?
Well, it galvanized
shift. It
galvanized a belief I've had all along, right? It galvanized a belief I've had. I wrote that New Day, New Life on the menu when we were opening the restaurant 3 years ago, and I had that philosophy probably half a decade before. I just realized that you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Yesterday's gone. New day, new life. Today is your chance to live. Each day is a chance to reinvent yourself, and try again, and not to take it for granted. And it was, what's happened to me, my own situation, which is devastating, is just it's another affirmation that you shouldn't let life pass you by, and you shouldn't, I don't know where I'm going to be tomorrow or next year or.
That's crazy. Thank you so much for sharing that story.
It's very front of mind. I'm drinking. I'm telling you everything.
Yeah. Did that kind of shift any perspective, I guess, from all of the effort that you put into your work life and building the businesses, and then obviously something so close to happen is like...
It's affirmational. I imagine, this is what I was afraid of, right? When I sold the business. I saw guys that I'd come up with die at their station working, and I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted something. I wanted more. I wanted something different. I don't know what, but I didn't know I didn't want to keep doing this for the rest of my life. And I'm never going to get it if I don't make the change, take the opportunity to sell. My daughter passing away. I knew, anything is possible. I never think you're going to lose a child. A devastating loss, you never get over it, you never get over it. you know.
I don't even know how I'm going to segue from that story.
Well, just segue. You're good. I mean, I've been dealing with this, as I say, you know, it's no comfort, and I don't want to seem cold telling you, but you want to be honest and say, you know, like for me, Elle died a little bit in each of the 6 years that she kind of tried after the divorce, that she kind of ignored me, you know, and made life difficult. I mean, that happens, you know, and it's a crutch, an emotional crutch for me that helps me through, you know, because of the pain I endured in that time. It isn't just about me. Where I feel most bad is for her mother and her brother, you know, who, you know, have to deal with that every day, right?
Yeah. I guess moving on, sadly.
Yeah.
What do you think young entrepreneurs should be looking at right now?
Do what you love, and the money will follow. You know, don't chase the money, chase the thing, and then the money will come from that.
How do you find?
So meaning, you have to you're doing it already. You know, I think back, I was having this conversation, funny enough, with my son Leo, who is here, and he's home for Christmas, and we were together yesterday. He's here right now, and he's like, you know, I really need to think about working. I would have had him working a lot sooner, but as you know, this is again, my ex-wife and I, we would always disagree. She would be like, I don't want him working. I want him going to school. I was like, no, he needs to do something so he knows what he likes and doesn't like, right? Because otherwise he comes out of school, he has no work experience, he has no idea what he wants to do, he has no direction, passion, mentor, nothing, no ties, no friendship, no contacts. I mean, you're going to start from zero with a degree. A degree is not an entree to a job. A degree is just proof that you can focus, you know? That's really what it is. It tells an employer, okay, this guy could tough it out for 4 years. I probably won't hire him, train him, and then he'll quit. That's what a degree is, really. It's you did what you said you were going to do. It's good, valuable, right? But more valuable is having relationships. I mean, I hired more people. The best people I hired didn't have a degree, no pedigree, no contacts, no silver spoon, but I knew them and I knew their grit and their character, you know? So point is, coming back full circle, you know, grandma's sage advice, do what you want to do, meaning you're doing it already. I said to Leo, what are you doing? Oh, I love making little movies on YouTube. And I was like, yeah, that's interesting. When my brother passed away when we were younger, I was like, I liked cars. You know, I got into the car business briefly, but I realized I'm still doing cars. I still go to car websites, car meetups, cars and coffee, car events at Pebble Beach and, you know, Amelia Island. I'm buying cars, I'm selling cars, but I do it as a hobby. You know, it's what I like to do. I can't make any money at it. It's something, I'm still doing the same thing. 40 years after, you know, I first discovered cars and I could drive, you know. What are you doing, Leo? I'm editing film and I'm doing this. I'm going, you're probably going to edit film and make little movies and do something or make big movies. At some point, he's in film school, you know, maybe, you know, like his dad.
You can live your dream.
Maybe I can live my dream vicariously through my son. I don't know, you know. So you're doing it already. I don't know what you're doing. Maybe you're in MMA. So maybe there's a future for you in MMA. Maybe there's you know, maybe you love chess.
What would you say to someone who's trying to find their purpose, who can't see, it's not clear to them, where they're like,
yeah,
I don't know what I want to do?
Two things. I would, firstly, I would take a step back from myself, meaning I would look at myself. What do I like to do? What am I doing? What am I actually doing? What do I like? You can write them down or mentally write them down. Some people like to write things down physically. I think it's a bit trite, but you can mentally make a note of, well, I like this or I like that. And you can and then think to yourself, what are those things? You can ask AI nowadays. You can say, AI, I'm good at this. What should I do? And maybe it'll spit out an idea, if not the exact path, and give you an idea that somebody else might not be able to conjure up. What do successful people do that have these character traits? And they'll spit out 40 ideas. And you'll be like, wow, that one looks pretty good, whatever that one is. You know. Yeah. The second is, you know, ask a friend. Say, you know, hey, you know, what do you think I'm actually good at? You know, and you might get somebody who knows you, maybe not too well, somebody without too much of a vested interest in. You don't ask your grandmother, who always wanted you to be a physician. Oh, you're a great doctor. You know, yeah. My dad was like, you're going to be a physician, right? My dad was a physician. His dad was a physician. His dad was a physician when they did more harm than good. You know, his great-great-great-grandfather was like a physician. And my dad was like, you're going to be a physician, right? I was like, no, I don't like blood. I don't want to do it. How about a chiropractor? You gonna be a chiropractor? And I was like, no, I don't want to be a chiropractor. And it all worked out. My daughter was, Ella, who passed away, she was studying to be a psychologist. So there you go. She had that medical caregiver's, mindset. Not everybody is programmed that. Sometimes it skips a generation.
I know that you invest into businesses as well.
I do.
What are the characteristics of businesses that you like to invest in?
I don't really have a characteristic. I like to invest in people. So you meet somebody who's incredibly inspired. I met these guys in the UK, completely, like limo drivers, and they're so passionate about their driving and their business. And I was like, these are guys you want to invest in. I would buy a car and get into a business with these guys. It's really the people, and they're being sufficiently inspired by their need and for what you bring to the table, capital and intellect and ideas, and their passion for what they do, whatever it is. Pet grooming, whatever. If I've met people who are like, I love dogs, I love cats, but I'm allergic. So, I know I'm allergic because I love them. You want to cuddle them, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm breaking out in hives. And you're like, okay, I can't do that, but I still love them. So, you want to invest in that business because I found somebody who's so passionate about it. They just can't stop. And they've been so passionate about it for years, but they're constantly undercapitalized because they just don't know how to manage money or raise money, but they know their business so well. I'm like, that's what you want to invest in, whatever it is. So if you really care about investing only in a certain class, I don't think you'll ever have the outcome you want.
What people do you like to invest in?
Well, people with grit. Grit. That word, I've said it a few times. Grit is determination. It's, I think in grit, people with grit also have determination, but they also have another important quality, which is integrity. Grit, people who are willing to see it through and face something that can be detrimental to them, but still follow through. They have integrity. And so you have to have integrity and determination. Determination alone without integrity isn't grit. Grit, people with grit are unbreakable. They're unbreakable. And you need, those are the people you want to invest in. And they're easy to find. You just have to open your eyes and look, and they're around.
If you lost everything tomorrow,
I've thought about that,
what would you do to get it back?
I don't, like as Bob Dylan said that time, I don't know that you could get it back. I've done a lot of things. I don't know if I could do that again. I don't know. I could do something. I like to think that, I've learned a lot about people and about myself, really. I think I would get it back. Money, success, dignity. If I lost everything, going to lose a little bit of yourself, probably. In many respects, I was happier coming up the ladder with a lot less money. If I think, one of the things about losing my daughter recently was you start to analyze and have moments, rather than, I was a blubbering mess too, believe me, I cried like a baby. But now having had the benefit of, healing a little bit and having had the benefit of grieving for so long while she was away from me and unreachable, and, I've been more mechanical about my thinking and everything. And if I lost everything, I was happier. When was I the happiest, Yeah. And it was building, I was growing and building.
Is there a certain amount of money that you get to where you feel the happiest? Was there a certain...
I felt happy about money exactly 2 times. 2 times. The first time was when I paid off my mortgage. Why? Because my dad had a mortgage. He struggled with the mortgage. Every dinner conversation, mortgage. Oh, I got to pay off the mortgage payment, blah, 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 mortgage. Can't go to Disney, mortgage. Very bad word, right? So when I paid off my mortgage, I felt so rich. I was like, wow, that was incredible. And then there was another time, and the second time was when I was holding the brass handrail to a Gulf Stream. And you hear the APU turbine whizzing, making power to the plane, and you're like, this is all mine, and you're like, wow, like, holy crap, that's so cool, because there's something very special. It's like space stuff, you know. You're going to be up in the sky 8 miles in a minute, and there's these guys in suits who had to go to school for years who are going to drive you up there, and you just get to sit in the back and have a drink, and you're like, wow. Comes with a bill. Won't make you happy.
No.
You know, won't make you happy. Won't make you happy long term. Honestly, the happy thing is those things. Paying off my parents' mortgage.
Yeah.
You know, they had a mortgage still. My sister's mortgage. Remember when I paid that off? Things like that. Helping other people.
What is the best bit of advice that you've been given?
Oh, geez, you know, a lot of good advice. Geez, that's a real toughie. The best piece of advice. Baby, don't let money change you. Don't let money change you. You do meet people, you change a little bit. And I would actually argue that it isn't, you meet people and you don't change. You just become more like yourself when you become successful. So you are who you are right now. Today, I think the Powerball lottery is going off and somebody's going to win 1.7 billion or they won't. And the jackpot will go up. But the point is, you know, that money will either change you, right, or let you be more like yourself. You know, it'll let you be more like yourself. So, you know, I guess, you know, try to remember to be kind, you know, and don't let it change you negatively. Don't become arrogant because you feel like you're better than other people because you have resources that other people don't. Simplistic advice, you know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Be kind. Arrest yourself if you see yourself becoming unkind in a moment, and compensate, you know, and don't be unkind. You know, I think that's probably the best advice I've been given is to, you know, and it was a little more crass. When I was giving the advice, it was, I'll tell you exactly what it was, what I was thinking about, which is an older fellow who'd made a lot of money said to me, Frank, you're going to become very successful. Just don't become an asshole. And I was like, wow. And I was really taken aback because I'd never heard him curse. And I was like, wow, that's really, but he's right. It's very easy to become an asshole and you know, become unkind, you know, unkind or inconsiderate. Don't lose your empathy, you know, empathy for your fellow man. When somebody's really struggling and $100 will help them. You know, I can't think of how many times I actually saw a genuinely homeless person who looked really in need, not in need of drugs, you know, or a new pair of shoes, but actually like hungry or desperate. And I gave him $100, and I can't remember how good I felt about myself just to see the relief, you know, on the person's face. You know, that was like, wow, I really made a difference in their day or life. You know, and little seemingly trivial things you could talk yourself out of doing something kind 100 times. 100 times you can convince yourself, and you're right. You don't need that. You don't owe that person anything. They're just going to use that to buy drugs. They're, you know, whatever it is, but they need it more than you. Yeah. And you make a difference in that moment to help them and alleviate some pain or discomfort. And you've done something good. I think that's important. You know, don't lose your empathy and kindness as you become sick. It doesn't mean you have to give all your money away. It doesn't have to mean you have to, you know, give your life to philanthropy if you're not so minded. You know, but try not to lose yourself, your humanity, and as you know, on your way up, and once you're at the top, whatever that means. The top, by the way, you know, none of us are at the top. Elon Musk is at the top. You know, I mean, he's got all the money, and you know, it was a great quote. I remember hearing Larry Page say, you know, and this is like years ago. He said, you know. And it was at a Google event. I heard him say myself, he says, and I'm paraphrasing because this was said many years ago, but it was, he said, you know, how are we going to manage all this money? It's a huge responsibility. We got all these guys, and overhead, administrators, and Larry, deadpan comment, said, I'm just going to give it all to Elon. And it was the right comment. What he said was, you want to give it to somebody who can dream bigger, somebody who knows what to do with it, not just a bunch of faceless administrators and overhead. Everybody laughed at the joke, but didn't really get the joke. The joke is, you want to give it to somebody who can make a real difference with the money. You know, when a guy like Elon is making a difference. You know, his mind is like.
I guess that segues us perfectly onto, I guess, the final question. It was like, this podcast is about the 1% mindset. What is your one trait that puts you in the 1%?
Well, you're in the 1%. Some people make it happen. Some people watch it happen, and some people wonder what happened. And I think the vast majority of the population is in the last two categories. They watch it happen, whether you're going to the footy match or whether you're reading about it in the news, or you wonder what happened. It's like, I didn't know that. Wow. I had no idea. You want to be in the 1%. You're in the 1% if you make it happen, whatever it is. Whatever you're doing, make it happen. And that's really the delineator.
That was a great answer. Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure.